Form intersections. Similar to the rotated boxes and organic perspective boxes exercise, this one is challenging and is meant to be. While the name suggests that we are focusing on your ability to handle the intersections between the forms, that's icing on the cake, and I expect that you will struggle with it. What I'm interested in most of all is your ability to draw these forms as being solid within the same space in a way that feels cohesive and consistent. Before we start, here's a hint. Stick to equilateral forms. That is to say, try and keep your forms roughly equal in all their three dimensions, length, width, height, and avoid any that are overly stretched in any one of these. This will keep dramatic perspective distortion out of the equation so we can focus on the core of the exercise. Understanding how forms intersect. Before we actually get to the exercise itself, we're going to discuss how forms intersect, or more specifically, how we come up with the lines we draw to represent those intersections. People have inordinate amounts of trouble with this, and I don't expect you to be able to do this correctly right at lesson 2, but I do want you to give it a shot. If I were to summarize how these intersections work, it would be this. Intersection lines sit exactly where they are able to run along the surfaces of both forms simultaneously. To understand what this means, let's step back a little and look at this diagram depicting all three kinds of intersections. I guess this is the diagram. So, an intersection between two lines occurs at a point. This is a point in space that happens to sit on both lines simultaneously. The yellow point on the diagram sits only on the blue line, the purple point sits only on the green line, and the pink point sits on neither and is just floating arbitrarily in space. The red point, however, sits on both lines at the same time and is therefore the intersection between them. An intersection between two planes in 3D space occurs instead in a line, or more accurately, at any points that sit on both planes simultaneously. This also applies to any 2D shapes sitting in 3D space, even if those 2D shapes are bent or warped. Finally, an intersection between two 3D forms can be represented by a 2D shape that can be bent or deformed in space. The edges of the shape run along the surface of the two forms simultaneously. You'll never find an edge of this shape that exists only on one surface of the forms at a time. Okay. This intersection shape can be quite difficult to figure out, and a big reason for this difficulty is that when we draw two forms in space, we decide where exactly they are. The intersections themselves allow us to describe these specific positions to others, but until we actually draw these intersections, how those forms relate to one another is not yet defined. If you ignored the red intersection line in this diagram, you could argue that the blue box was floating completely in front of the cylinder or behind it, or you could claim that they were intersecting in a different manner altogether. Once that red shape line is drawn, however, or more specifically the red line, the fainter red section is the part we wouldn't be able to see without X-ray vision, the relationship is cemented. This is why form intersections are so critical and why they become an extremely important tool for you, because it's your job to explain to your audience how the forms you've drawn relate to one another in the space you've created. The actual exercise. You start off with a box. Yay. Well, you can choose whichever simple form you like, but in honor of the name of this website, we're going to use a box. It also helps that it's the most versatile form we've got, and it effectively summarizes 3D space by its very nature. If you're having trouble drawing boxes without explicitly drawing your vanishing points, you should look into the 250 box challenge before attempting this exercise. Be sure to draw through your forms. That is, include the lines that exist in the opposite side of the form that we technically wouldn't be able to see. This will help you get a clearer understanding of how that form sits in 3D space. I will warn you, however, that this will make your boxes harder to understand visually, so you should absolutely thicken the visible lines to make them a little clearer. Adding a little line weight to the silhouette of the form also helps. Like what we're talking about on the bottom of this diagram. Those are some great looking boxes. Do not use underdrawings. In the past, people have attempted to make things easier by roughing in the forms in pencil or even with the same pen before going back over them to clean up their line work. This is a bad idea as it encourages you to be wasteful with your rough lines and then causes you to be overly careful with your cleanup lines, which ruins the flow and confidence of your marks. Instead, every mark you put down should be done so using the ghosting method. Everything should be planned and thought through and ultimately executed with confidence. You can later go over your lines to add more line weight, but there's a difference there. You're not replacing the lines, you're adding thickness to them. So now draw another box. This is where the meat of the exercise comes in. Your primary goal here is to draw a bunch of different forms that all look and feel consistent. That is to say, they all feel like they belong together in the same space and scene. When two forms don't feel consistent, it's because their rate of foreshortening, how quickly a form shrinks or grows as it moves further away or closer to the viewer, are not really the same. One box may get smaller really quickly, dramatic perspective or foreshortening, and another may barely change over the length of its form, shallow perspective or foreshortening. So the goal of this exercise is to learn how to make your forms look and feel as though they should exist together in the same scene. For now, I strongly encourage you to avoid forms that are stretched in any one dimension. For example, long tubes, long boxes, and so on. At this point, it is far better to stick to fairly equilateral forms, that is, forms that are roughly the same size in every dimension. This was of course mentioned at the top of the page and will be mentioned again. And then here's our diagram. Now we can explore other forms. If you're still feeling shaky with your boxes, which is perfectly acceptable, you can do entire sheets of only boxes. In fact, that's actually a pretty good idea since, as I said before, a box is the most versatile form. If you can draw boxes consistently, then you can construct any other form within the space enclosed in that box. When dealing with any ellipse-based forms, always start with the minor axis. If you don't remember what a minor axis is, jump back to the ellipses section of lesson 1 for a quick refresher. This image includes a really quick breakdown on how to draw a cylinder along with points to keep in mind. Always keep your minor axis centered in the cylinder and keep the degree of your far end ellipse larger, wider, than the end that is closer to the viewer. If you feel you need more practice, and I assure you, you probably do, with cylinders and ellipses, don't worry, you'll get plenty more on the 250 cylinder challenge later on, after lesson 5 ideally. You can look at those notes to get a sense of how to construct your cylinders around a minor axis as well. So we have the cylinder diagram, which is enormous. So you can just go click on it. So now fill up the whole page with forms. I mean it. Fill up the whole damn page. People tend to submit homework that has tiny groupings of 2 or 3 intersecting forms. I want to see an entire page of forms all layered on top of each other. It will get visually confusing, but push through it and use line weight to emphasize certain lines over others. Remember that you have a repertoire of 5 simple forms: boxes, tubes, balls, pyramids, and cones. Also, don't forget to draw through your ellipses and to apply the ghosting method. The ellipse thing goes double for spheres because if your circle is at all uneven, it will not read as a sphere. Lastly, avoid drawing forms that are half off the page because they don't end up teaching us a whole lot. So I expect to see a heavy concentration of forms around the center. Now that you have filled your page with forms, you can now try giving some thought as to how these forms intersect. In the section above, I discussed how we approach intersections between forms, specifically using rounded forms because they're tricky, so be sure to check that out. Just remember, I did not expect you to nail this. Form intersections are not simple by any stretch, and they take time and work to truly understand. Give it a shot, and even if it doesn't turn out well, keep moving forward. I fully expect you to continue practicing this even after I've marked the lesson as complete, so you will have the opportunity to continue working at it as you move forwards. Luckily, this stuff doesn't come into play until lessons 6 and 7, and in those lessons, the intersections we use are considerably simpler than these. The purpose of this exercise. This exercise is all about developing your understanding of 3D space and how forms exist within it in relation to each other. It is one thing to be able to draw a form that feels three-dimensional on its own, but throwing that form in with a bunch of others within the same space leaves a lot of room for inconsistencies and contradictions to arrive. Building up your own grasp and overall belief in the illusion you're producing, something that is pushed that much further by learning how to define the actual position of the forms relative to one another through their intersection lines, helps us push a lot of this work more to our subconscious, where all the lies we're juggling can be kept in line. That was like a 2-sentence paragraph. Okay. Mistake. Using stretched forms. I promise I'd mention this again. Don't draw stretched forms. It increases the complexity of the foreshortening in the scene and is going to distract you from the main focus of the exercise. Another mistake. Small groups of forms. I don't want you drawing individual groupings on a single page. Students will often do this when they're not feeling quite as confident about what they're doing. No matter how you feel about it, I want you to draw one big network of forms that are all overlapping and interconnecting. Another mistake. Using a cleanup pass. Mentioned this one in the instructions as well, and it had its own little section. Some of you with prior experience drawing may be familiar with the idea of roughing lines in or drawing them lightly or faintly before going back over the lines with a nice, rich, dark line. Don't do that. I want you to draw each and every line you put down with the same kind of confidence as you would afford any part of this drawing. Don't worry about hiding things or organizing your strokes. Once you've done all of your forms, you can add line weight to help develop a hierarchy to your drawing, but line weight should only be added to local sections of existing lines to emphasize them and clarify overlaps. Don't go applying line weight to the entirety of a line, especially not your ellipses. This way, the bits of weight you do add here and there can all be drawn confidently using the ghosting method in order to keep them smooth and confident. Students go back over their work with a slow, belabored stroke, trying to be careful, generally causes their drawings to become stiff and undermines the solidity of their forms. And then this is kind of what it looks like. Very scary. My autofocus is on. That's awesome. find it. That should fix it. Yeah, that looks fine. This box is wrong. I can feel it. But that's fine. Oh, you know what I did? I just made like the same exact orientation, just a bigger box. I have to not do that again. Let's make a box like this way. Trying not to make it too dramatic of a box, but we'll see. There's 4 pages of this, so there's plenty of room to make mistakes. Okay. I think I did it. This is also not a good box. More boxes, more boxes. Let me make big box. You doing all right?
I'm gonna throw this out the window.
Oh, okay. Well, I guess it's a good thing we closed the window. I think the construction's moving farther away from us slowly. That or they put their jackhammer on silent. Putting this here for my wrist. Oh, that's not gonna work. Okay. Well, we tried. Oops. Okay. Well, this one's just sitting by itself, so we're gonna have to add another box. Oh, jeez, it's getting hard to keep track of things. Okay. Oh my god, I don't remember what I'm looking at now. I need a different pen. I'm making dots to plot out my box, but there's dots from the other boxes around it that I plotted out, and now I don't know which ones are mine. But it's okay. I have a pack of rainbow Sharpies. Let's just do it all over again.
I'm gonna go get it.
Okay. These are ending up more pinchy than I want them to, but that one ended up horribly. Okay, cool. That's much better. Okay. I thought I was gonna sneeze. Dang it. It's always the boxes at the end that want to just trip you up. This one and this one and this one. Hey, it's okay. I'm just gonna trust that I nailed it. I probably didn't, but oh well. Of course I miss. I'm gonna put one more box in here, and then I have to figure this out, and that'll be the part where I ruin all of it, and it'll be great. Okay. Oh gosh.
I think I got it set up.
The lights? Okay, so now we got a page chock full of boxies. I spent 40 minutes making boxes. Alright, so let's look at the instructions here. Where did I put them? Okay. So now page is full of forms. So now you can try giving some thought to how these forms intersect. Okay. So I'm going to stare at this. And I'm going to hurt my brain. Yeah, okay. Let me try reading more. Okay. So it's the... Oh. Okay, we're just going to do our best. Okay. So, how do these intersect? Where do they intersect? Oh, God. I love how this just immediately makes my brain turn into a microwave pizza. Where the outside is screaming, the inside is frozen. Okay, so... I think... Okay, yeah, I think... I don't know anything. That's what I figured out. That's my conclusion. Okay, so... Okay. Okay. I think I get it. I think. I don't know. And I have to do 4 of these. Okay, good. Okay, so we just decide. Making sure. Okay, so I think for the next page I might try doing more severe overlaps. But we're gonna keep going. And I'm only doing 1 today. Okay. I feel like, well, no, I think this is actually okay. Just spinning this a lot just to try and see if it clears up the brain. Okay, cool. That looks like I tried. So that's good. Okay. So this is what it looks like. We'll find out if I'm wrong later.